You listen to the hashtag on the cruise. It's your girl Ebony Cruz. Boy, did y'all like that mini mix? That's DJ LJ. You can catch him weekdays 3 to 7 right here on the AGM network within the mix. Get your shout outs in early. Now, you know, we got some special people in the building today. And my country stuff say Yassine. Miss Yassine, huh? How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I am doing good. I'm glad that you are here. We get a chance to talk about you as an author. Talk about your story, your journey, you know, get to bring people into the world. And I love to talk to authors because writing, it's a whole nother ballgame in itself.
Yes,
right?
it is. Very expressive.
Yeah, and to put it all on paper and people understand it. So I'm excited about it. Now today, tell our guests, tell our listeners, you know, what is something that you want them to get out of our conversation today?
Well, I hope that they will get healing and they learn about the different signs and symptoms of mental illness and they can help each other. And basically end the stigma of mental illness.
Mental illness has been a topic that has been sent in to me several times as a request for us to speak on it on the show. And it's so many different avenues that has been brought that I've never really kind of taken all of it and put it on air. So when I got your email, I'm like, well, this would be perfect. This would be perfect because there are a lot of stigmas and there's things that happen and it turns into national tragedies that originally stemmed off in a mental illness.
Right.
But we didn't catch it.
Exactly. If we knew the signs and symptoms, the person could have gotten help. And we could have avoided that situation.
Right.
It's all about prevention.
Right. It's all about prevention. All right. So we're going to jump into that when we come back next hour. It goes. But anyways, I hope everyone is enjoying their day. I am here speaking with Yassine Hall. She's the author of The Journey Untold, Twisted Love. It's a struggle with mental illness from a mother's perspective. And this conversation is very near and dear to our listeners. We're already getting questions in. So before we even jump into the questions, let's talk about the book in itself. What made you decide to say, you know, I'm going to put this on paper to be an inspiration to others?
Well, it wasn't my first original idea. My cousin, Loan Sue, who's also the co-author on this book, she wrote an article about me 2 years ago when I started my boutique business. And I was premiered on the red carpet, and she did an interview with me. And after that interview, she's like, you know, you have such an inspiring story. You need to tell your story to the world. And at first I was like, oh, please. You know?
Like, get out of here.
You would listen to my story, you know. And she recommended that the first book in the series should be about my mother. Now, this is something that I never wanted to speak about, my mother's mental illness. I was ashamed of my mother and what I had been through with my mother in the Virgin Islands. There was so much shame placed on me as a child that when I moved to Florida, I decided that part of my life, I kind of built an invisible life.
Oh, you just put the wall up against it.
Yes, nobody
Gotcha.
knew me here. Nobody knew of my mother. Nobody knew what I've been through. And I kind of just put it in the back of my mind to cope and went on with my life. And I just put that side of me aside. My kids and all did not know that my mother had mental illness. My ex-husband did not know that my mother had mental illness. So that was just a past of mine that I did not want to talk about. And she buzzed in my ear for about 5 months, kept asking. And I went to court for my grandmother, we were in probate court. And I hadn't seen my grandmother in like 5 years. And I saw videos and I started to bawl in court. And the judge said, I can't move from there. I'm going to have to sit here through the trial. And I said, you know what? If I'm going to feel pain for my grandmother, the loss of my grandmother, I'm just going to deal with two pains at once. And I wrote my story in court.
Get out of here. Wow, that's a strong testimony that you're like, man, you're in court and you're writing.
Yes.
Goodness, get out of here. Well, it brings me to some of our questions because, you know, some of it is cultural.
Yes.
As right off the gate, it's the first question this guy had. He's from Nigeria, so he's like, you know, when you're dealing with, you know, mental illness, how do you deal with it from a cultural standpoint? Because, you know, sometimes you can't talk about it. Or you got to act like it's not happening. You know, you just got to make it disappear. So how would you deal with that?
Well, there's two ways. There's two stigmas. You have the Caribbean culture stigma, and you also have American society culture, and it's two different. And with me ending the stigma in both different cultures, sometimes I have to turn off my VI thinking and turn on my American thinking. Because there's a disparity between the two of them. With American culture, we have the resources here in America. Is the education. We lack the education and awareness, and the way how mental illness is perceived in America is considered a Caucasian disease. So you see a lot of Caucasian faces, but we don't see a lot of African Americans that are coming forward to admit that they have the illness. So we don't have any guiding force to say, well, okay, this could be something that we need to pay attention to.
Right.
Also, the finances. Once you already have been diagnosed with mental illness, it's quite expensive if you don't have the right insurance to get mental care. But the resources in America is here. And there are resources that offer services for free that the community just does not know about. And that's why I go into the community here in the United States, in Orlando, and I go into the communities and I train the children and I train the families that this is where you can get free counseling or percentage counseling. The problem with the Virgin Islands is we have the culture with the stigmatism of we still going back to that African mentality that it doesn't exist,
right?
Or it's a spiritual mentality, and we don't want to admit that it's available. But what we lack most in the Virgin Islands is we don't have access to any resources.
Right.
So that's where the disparity comes from. At least here in America, you have the resources. It's just educating the community where it is. In the Virgin Islands, there's nothing. There's not much.
Right, and see, for mental illness, it's something that a new illness can be discovered every day, right?
Yes.
Isn't it something, because there's
something can trigger it. Trauma, grief, anything can onset mental illness, correct.
When you, with, say, trauma and grief, a little bit different, sometimes I know they put them together, do you see the same type of symptoms or the same type of reaction to both situations?
Yeah, you can have the same signs and symptoms for the many different forms of mental illness. Now, only a therapist, a counselor, or psychiatrist can really ask the right questions and notice the right symptoms and odd behaviors to distinguish which one of the disorders you will fall under.
Right, it's just a matter of one, accepting it, and then two, going seeking help. So what do you tell somebody or Americans, that a family member could be going through a situation, and all these years they kind of been keeping them locked in the room? When people come over, they don't tell them what's going on. What do you tell a family that's been living like this to finally set themselves free from this type of situation? The
best way that I've found is the National Alliance of Mental Illness, NAMI, is your greatest resources, because if you're the only one, family members don't know, they don't see other family members going through it. They just see themselves. But when you go to meetings, because they have a great family program, a peer-to-peer network, where you can go there for free and meet other families that are going through what you're going through and give you the support and the resources to get the help that you need, so you don't feel alone. And that's like one of the basic feelings of when you have a family member that's mentally ill, is that feeling of people's going to stigmatize you because it's different.
Right.
And they don't understand, and you don't have anyone to talk to about what's going on.
They call you stupid, dumb.
Yes.
They ride a short bus.
Or a lunatic or crazy. Yes. And we don't want that. And, being mentally ill is treated as the lowest form of a human being. And we shouldn't. We should be kind and compassionate towards the mentally ill. That's what they need, is compassion.
Right, because there's so much already going on.
Right.
Here I was looking at on the notes that you sent me here in regards to sometimes the conditions are due to a lack of education.
Yes.
To where you're just not getting informed.
Right.
And we go into where some folks that are heavily traditional or religious think that has something to do with the spiritual balance.
Yes.
Now, before we jump into that, because I know we got to go to break here in a moment, let's talk a little bit about mental illness as it does reference in the spiritual world.
Okay, my grandmother is a Christian, and we raised in a Christian mentality. When my mother started going through signs of sadness in the beginning, before it all started and it started to escalate, she would encourage her daughter to pray. And I feel that, I don't get me wrong, I think prayer, we should all, pray to God.
Right.
Yes, we should all believe in a higher power, but sometimes that higher power is bigger than you. And with my mother's sadness, instead of being there for each other, like my mother's friends started getting less and less, to where I didn't even know who my mother's friends were anymore. They never came around. And they isolated her. And my grandmother would pray all the time for my mother. But as her illness started to progress, I used to tell my grandmother, the little child, like 5-6 years, can you give my mother a pill or some bush tea or something? Because this is beyond prayer.
Bush tea, I like that.
Yeah, bush tea is a cure for everything. And I think she just didn't want, it's a tough pill to swallow when your daughter or your child or your family member is mentally ill already. And then not having the resources, it makes it even worse because you don't know what to do to help this person and you feel helpless.
Right. You're absolutely right. All right. So when we come back, we're going to dive a little bit deeper. I got 2 more questions that just came in that we're going to talk about. We're discussing mental illness, also the journey of the untold twisted love that is written by Yassine Hall, right here on hashtag On The Cruise. Keep it locked. You're listening to hashtag On The Cruise. This is your host, Ebony Cruz. It is 16 minutes after the top of the hour, and we're discussing today mental illness. Mental illness is a big issue nationwide, does not discriminate. However, we do not like to regulate and talk about the mental illness. But today, Yassine Hall, she tracked me down. The author of Journey Untold, Twisted Love, My Mother's Struggle with Mental Illness is here today. And I'm loving the conversation. We're getting a lot of great feedback because I was telling you off air, I work with foster kids, and that is a huge thing that they're seeing now. Before, it was easy to diagnose. This is a traditional child, this is a medical child or therapeutic child, and boom. Now, it's starting to see more of, we don't know what this diagnosis is.
Right.
And like you said, with the expenses and being a foster child, sometimes you may not have the best insurance. You just get the bare minimum. Like, that is it. As we were on break, we had a question that came in. A young lady was talking about her nephew. And she's noticed over the years different things. He's a loner. They do keep him kind of, to himself. They don't let him go in front of people because they're afraid of how he may outburst, outlash. She says she's been saying for years she thinks it's something. However, mom doesn't want to believe it. Her baby's fine. What do you do in these situations? Intervention, she says, would probably be a disaster with the family. May make it worse. But letting it go and not saying anything could also.
Letting it go could really end up in a very sad situation for this kid. If it's a kid, I'm not sure. I'm hoping the child, I'm assuming that the child is under the age of 21. Now, under the age of 21, if you have Medicaid, there are, in Orlando, there are services for free that they can take the child to for counseling, but it does have to be a parent. And like you said, the parent is not admitting that we have a problem. And I've seen this time and time again. And it, at some point it's going to interfere with its school activities. Mm-hmm. And the school is going to start to recommend resources for the parent if it becomes a behavior problem.
Is it some behaviors, because from my understanding, I've heard mental illness is like a silent creeper. Like, it's there, but you may not know about it. And like you said, certain situations will really trigger it. So could certain behaviors be, wanting to be by myself or being more withdrawn? Yes. You know what I mean?
Warning signs are going inward, becoming an introvert. All of a sudden, the child was social. Now the child is no longer social or adult. Okay. They're not communicating well anymore. They're being distant from their friends. Are they isolating themselves? Have you noticed them starting to give away their items, their personal items? And you have to be careful because a lot of what I mentioned also has to do with adolescence.
Oh, and in the midst
of their behavior. And it overlaps, right? It overlaps. So when you add in the odd behaviors that go on top of what adolescent behaviors are, that's where you should go wonder and seek out counseling and resources to see if the child is in fact going through onset of mental illness.
How can you ensure parents that this isn't something that they did? Because I know a lot of people, they don't, it's not like, I know I'm a great parent, I know I've given, I've provided, and that's part of the denial period of even accepting that there's something wrong. Like, how do you kind of guide those people?
Well, what I tell them is this. Okay, you have prevention for cancer because we know cancer exists. Mm-hmm. We know that diabetes exists. Right. And we all know that kidney disease, that also exists. But when it comes to matters of the mind, we don't think that a disease of the mind exists. So we don't talk about it. And that's the key. When it comes to the mind and the brain, we don't ever think that the brain can get sick. And it can. With all the information that's coming in on a daily basis, by the age of 14, that starts the onset of mental illness in a child. It can start even earlier, but the medium age is 14 when you start seeing signs at the child.
Right, and it's a lot of pressures at the age of 14, especially nowadays. I mean, it's a matter of how you look, how you sound, do you fit in, and then let's not talk about what's happening at home, God forbid.
And cyberbullying is now a new thing. Right. And that anything that causes trauma or emotional distress can lead to an onset of mental illness. I was bullied for 15 years. And I'm diagnosed with adult ADD.
Yeah.
But I don't take medication for it because once I knew my signs and symptoms and I knew what it was, I found other alternatives to cope. So I have to write every single thing down, and my calendar looks like like daily, like I micromanage myself because I know I have this disease. It's not disease, but I have this illness. And how do I cope with it? I had to learn coping mechanism from a therapist as to how to cope. And during those sessions, I learned that dealing with everything that I dealt with my mother and the bouncing around from family members' home to family members' home and completely being in my situation with my mother, that lost my focus over time. And that's why I tend to lose focus sometimes.
That's me. I joke about it, but I probably seriously need to go get myself checked out. I think I say all the time I have ADD or ADHD. I'm like, I swear I do. And if I don't have it written down, and then the other part with me is that if it's written down and we deviate from it somewhere, it's like, wait a minute, like my day is like gone. You know what I mean? And
I forget to eat.
Yes, I have to get myself together. It's
9 o'clock at night. I'm like, did I eat?
Did I eat today?
I didn't remember eating.
Now I don't have a problem with eating. I do.
And I'm hungry.
Oh, see.
But my brain forgot to eat.
See, those are the small things that, you don't pay attention to. Those are the small things. Before we go to this break, because I know we have a request line coming in. When we come back, I want to visit the mental illness rise here in America. What are things that you see here in America so we can start getting that information out? All right, so we got this by the request line, Butter Love. Y'all got to make sure you get your request on thecruise@gmail.com. Keep it all right here, the hashtag on the cruise. 20 minutes to the top of the hour. Listen to the hashtag on the cruise. Y'all know you gotta get up in that mini mix. Get your request in. That is hashtag on the cruise @gmail.com. Make sure you let us know what is going on. We are in the middle of our discussion in reference to mental illness, and this has been a hot topic for you guys. You guys have been giving me a lot of great feedback here on my email and social media that this is much needed, well overdue, and I appreciate you. Yassine, thank you so much for just reaching out to me. You guys got to reach out and get her book. You saying she's very informative, which she is. That lets me know that this book is going to tell a story.
Yes, it does.
Okay, so first let's tell them full name of the book. Where can they get it? Online, from you, however. That way we can make sure that we get them in connection.
Okay, you can get an autographed copy at JourneyUntold.com. It's also on Amazon in Kindle, so you can get it there. Look for Journey Untold. And on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook, you can follow us at Journey Untold.
Okay, I like that. The Untold Journey. And it is an untold journey if you're dealing with mental illness. Here in America alone, it's so many families that, discriminate against mental illness. We say it's something, you're crazy.
Yes.
I hear a lot of the funny jokes that the kids make. Oh, they ride the short bus. That's for the crazy people. They got the helmets, It's all types of stuff, but kids definitely do not understand. Okay, so next question here we're moving into. This is Jamar. Jamar says he'd like to think he grew up with a mental illness. However, his mom would always say, she is not getting a check. Get yourself together, boy.
Yes. I've heard my grandmother say that to my mother plenty of times. Oh, Bernice, you just playing crazy. And I remember as a child thinking, she's not playing.
Like I'm for real.
I'm for real. Like something is not right. I mean, am I the only one that's seeing this and everybody else is in denial that my mother needed help? Nobody realized that my mother needed help until she was running behind me in the street screaming she's going to kill me and being saved for my life from my mother. That's when they finally hit them like, okay, yeah, she really needs some help.
That reminds me of the story. Remember in Daytona, the lady who drove the minivan into the ocean?
With the kids.
Right. And there were a lot of red flags before, but no one paid any attention.
Right.
Oh, they just blew it under the rug. But it always happens when something like that catches national news.
That's when they notice the signs from before.
Right.
But if we teach the community the signs and the symptoms, are they showing sadness? Are they withdrawn? Are they showing behaviors that they're no longer used to do? Is their behaviors odd? Then it's time to tell them, I think, maybe you should get help. And you want to address it in a way that you don't want to come off like you're pushing on the person to get help. Because most of the times a person doesn't even realize their behaviors themselves. Because mental illness is a very invisible disease. So if you have depression, you don't think that you're depressed. You think that everybody else is around you. You don't know it. So if you see anyone, like I'm going to describe it from my mother's point of view. From watching my mother grow up, it started where she had this over-obsessive compulsion of me. I was not treated as her child. So as you think of a mother and daughter's relationship, mine was not that. Mine was a complete opposite. I saw my friends have that, but I didn't have that. I was my mother's possession. She owned me. It was that kind of ownership type love. I was not allowed to speak unless spoken to. She spoke for me. My mother sat every single day in a cafeteria in school and ate lunch with me for 3 years, and nobody in school thought that was different. But growing up as a child, I thought, well, my mother probably just loved me more than the other kids. And maybe that's why she's always here.
Right.
But at the age of 9, after 3 years of that, I'm like, at some point, is somebody not going to kick her out of the lunchroom so I can eat and be normal?
Right.
You know, and other things went through. She started bathing and rubbing alcohol. She thought the water has germs. That's where her paranoia was starting to kick in.
Oh, so she would pour rubbing alcohol in the bath water?
No, she would in her washcloth.
Oh, wow.
And she would get, at that point this is after she had already had her nervous breakdown at the age of 32, and I was the age of 12. This is when these other odd behaviors started to develop. And that's when she started bathing with alcohol. She would not want sheets on the bed. She was afraid of people. She would sit on the waterfront and just talk to the water. And it just started progressing where she had like 7 multiple personalities that she would just, converse within herself. And then by that time, she was totally withdrawn from me. She didn't even know who I was.
Raquel is asking the question that if, say for instance, she says here, I have been dealing with depression that I've recently just admitted to, but it's just with so much going on in my life, whether it be bills, whether it be kids, recent separation, I acknowledge it. I don't think I have a mental illness, but where do you go to continue to talk about things and to get things out? Because I do feel myself in a spiraling downhill.
Okay, to answer her question, now there's 2 different things. You could be in depression or you could just be depressed. If it does not impact your life in which you're no longer working, you're no longer taking care of yourself, you're no longer paying your bills, you're in depression.
Gotcha.
So she could be going through a period where she's depressed, and she may just need a counselor to just talk about what she's feeling and get all those emotions out. Sometimes talking to somebody makes you feel a whole lot better inside. And it could just be too much for her to hold in, and she just need guidance.
Right.
To tell her, well, okay, I have a situation where I have a lot of my friends are dealing with a lot of financial problems, and as well as their kids and stuff. And just having that extra person to speak to is a weight off your shoulder.
Right. You're right about that, because life is hard. Like every day, you never know. It's something that comes around, and that's why I'm really big on kind of always those motivational things in the morning, because life is, you can wake up in a great mood and 2 minutes later something happens and it just takes you out of there, and it's hard for some people to bounce back. 10 minutes to the top of the hour. You're listening to # On The Cruise. I'm your host, Ebony Cruz. I'm joined here today by author Yassine Hall. And you can go to journeyuntold.com. Check out the website. Get your book there. Get more information. Get in touch with her. I found out she's a mentor. She does so much.
Yes,
you are really good. Yes, you do.
Yes, I believe in helping the community.
This conversation needs to continue. I really do believe so. I just don't think we got enough time to get to everything, especially when you start thinking about the community and how they play a role in it, especially for kids in school, how the school plays a role in it. I feel like there's so many areas that we are missing out on, and I would definitely like to invite you to come back.
I would love to.
Yeah, and maybe focus on
the medical part of it.
Yeah, the medical
science,
part.
And go deeply into the signs and the symptoms of the different disorders.
Right.
Because it's important that we see the signs in ourselves. I suffered from childhood depression. When my mother had her breakdown, I then went into depression. And I had the signs. I was sad. I was already an introvert because of all the bullying, because of my mother, for no other reason that she had a mental problem. I got bullied. And and my grandfather passed away 6 months after she had her nervous breakdown. So I went into childhood depression. And I had the signs. I was sad. I became an introvert. I didn't want to go to school. I didn't want to do activities, nothing. It wasn't until I cut off my hair that my grandmother stopped in her tracks and asked me, "What is going on with you, little girl? Talk to me." Because my hair was down to my back. For me to cut my hair off, that was major. Yeah. That was a sign. And at that time, I did feel like I didn't want to be here anymore. I was just done. I figured that if I was no longer here, the world would be in such a better place. My mother wouldn't have gone through her breakdown. My grandmother wouldn't have to deal with all this stress. And my grandfather would still be here. I blame myself for the entire world's problems.
Right, and I'm willing to bet you that's what many other people are doing. Even the adults that are living with mental illness, they're not going out. Right. You know, they're in home. They're in their own little cave. So what is something that you could give someone that's at home right now? They could be just debating and juggling with themselves, like, should I go in and get help? Like, should I go even just be seen? I'm going through a lot. I'm experiencing some of the symptoms that she said, you know, but I'm still in denial. What is that push that you could give someone to go take that extra step?
I encourage everyone to go out and just, even if it's just a friend or a relative that you trust, just talk to them. Sometimes just talking about the situation can lift such a heavy burden off of yourself. A lot of us don't want to be diagnosed. I know, for example, I didn't want to be diagnosed with mental illness. It's a tough pill to swallow. But you know what? The consequences later on is more devastating than what you're feeling now. Right,
because you can live your entire life dealing with this and never have happiness, that closure, never get that.
Yes, and it's very important. It's very important for good mental health. We don't want. I want to have my community healthy, and I want to promote good mental health. So if you do have the signs and the symptoms, reach out. Reach out to someone. The resources are there. Go on NAMI.org's website. Find out when the services are available. They're all for free. They have resources for therapists and all that stuff for you. Just reach out and get the help you need. We don't want anyone else suffering from mental illness. We're trying to do prevention. Good mental health,
All right, okay, one last time. If you want to go pick up this book, you can go to www.journeyuntold.com. Also, be sure to follow her on Facebook, Instagram, on Twitter. You go to Facebook.com/Journey Untold. Same with Instagram.com/Journey Untold. And if you go to Journey Untold book, you actually be following the book site on Instagram as well. And you know what's so crazy about it? They even have a YouTube, youtube.com/Journey Untold. Go learn more information. Pick up this book, support, because your support helps her go out and do more.
Yes.
I love that you're a life mentor coach.
Yes.
I love that, because although we think we have it together, sometimes we need that extra party.
And sometimes we just need a person to listen and to guide us along in our struggles in life, and that's what I do. I mostly do it for youth, but I also do it for adults. And the reason why I cater to the youth is because onset of mental illness starts from the youths. If we could help the youths from now, we could prevent depression, anxiety, and all the other disorders as an adult.
Right. And some of these national stories that happen, and we catch it at the last minute. Again, thank you so much. This is our discussion today on mental illness. Now, we are going to bring her back. I just got to figure out when. It's must needed. You guys gave me great feedback. We're going into our Caribbean hour here on #OnTheCruise. You got 5 minutes to be on time wherever it is you need to be. Just make sure you keep it locked right here to the AGM Network.
Pleasure.